Welcome to the Crowdfunding Christian Music Podcast. I'm Garrett Godfrey. This is the very first ever guest interviews episode. And we've got an exciting interview coming up with Nick FLORA, where you'll be able to hear about his current campaign for 3 EPs, how he got into music in the first place, what's up with his podcast, who writes this stuff, what he really thinks about the name Keith, and much, much more. Stick around. So we're on with Nick FLORA. And tell us about this campaign you've got going on. What's going on?
Can people see me as well as hear me?
Yes.
So this is video. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Well, thanks for asking about this campaign. There's, you know what? It's crazy. I don't know exactly what you want to know about it. I mean, basically, I'm trying to cram as much into one campaign as so I don't have to come back to the well, as it were. Every, 18 months or whatever and be like, hey, remember me? I'm going to ask for more money. So I thought, it would be a good idea. And I have so many varied interests as far as the kind of stuff I write that I was like, I'll just do, I've had friends who have done a few different EPs, and, thematically and sonically it all, or stylistically even sounds completely different from the last one. And I was like, I want to do that. I had these 3 ideas bouncing around my brain. And instead of, spanning them out over the course of 6 years or whatever, it'd probably be less pressure to just do, instead of 10 songs, compact them to an EP each and then release them over the course of a year, which is daunting. But at the same time, I think it's something that I have most of it written. So I was like, it would just be the recording process, And two of the ideas, one of the ideas is a full-fledged, basically pop rock, full band involved thing, which is what I'm recording right now. And then the other 2 are basically acoustic piano based. So that's a lot easier to record and than to get a whole mess of people involved and I really like all kinds of music, so it was really hard for me to sort of figure out what to do first, but I thought, you do the hardest thing first and then maybe it doesn't seem as daunting to approach these other things. So I'm doing these 3 EPs and trying to get this campaign to fund all 3 of them. And the budget is essentially less than most people would do for a record these days. So I'm hoping that's people will be like, oh, I get more for less, but that just depends on who's going to pledge. I don't think that really. I wonder. I've been spending the last 2 weeks trying to get in the head of Kickstarter backers, and I haven't cracked it yet. But
well, now you had a campaign ages ago that didn't quite make it, but then your next one for your project that was fully funded and went forward a couple years ago,
and more so, yeah.
Yeah. So
it was really that first one was right when I had never heard of Kickstarter before. It was 2009, 2010. Yeah, it was 2010. So it was around the point when artists were just hearing about it. Fans really, unless you were an early adopter to things, you really didn't know what it was. And so I just set it up and then kind of tweeted about it and then left it alone. I didn't really know that you're supposed to, I didn't understand it at all. So it's partially my fault and partially the technology's fault that it didn't go through. And I was just like, well, this feels terrible. I don't like it when these campaigns don't work. But there is sort of I learned so much. And then over the course of the next 2 years, everybody seemed to be doing it. There were higher profile people jumping on the crowdsourcing bandwagon, and everybody knew what it was. Even to the point now where even if you have an Indiegogo or use Pledge Music, people still call it a Kickstarter.
Yep.
It's like Kleenex.
Exactly.
It's Kleenex or Coke. It's the brand, but people call it that. So it's become a part of the zeitgeist now. That one didn't go through, but thankfully, I was able to get the money to record it. And I was a relatively unknown person at that point as far as music goes. I had 1 album out, but it wasn't really doing much. And thankfully, my producer just threw his hat in the ring and challenged everybody to support me. And there was a huge growth in between Hello Stranger, which was my second album, the one that didn't get funded, and then the reintroduction of Nick FLORA, the third album, which did get funded. I toured a lot, and I just really kind of I've busted my behind to get the word out there, and it just seemed to work, and people are more on board and than ever to sort of to help me, because I think a lot of people sort of, when you get into a new artist, which I was relatively at the time, I think people were really interested to see what I was going to do next, and so that was definitely helpful. And at this point, I'm still always asking myself, like, what can I do next that's not, that people don't know about me? Like, what if you know me really well? Nobody that knows me well will be surprised by the EPs that are coming, but like, there are people who just know me as fans, I think, might be surprised that I have a couple more tools, notches in my belt as far as like where I can put certain creative tools and pull them out. And so we'll see. But that was such a, like, the last campaign was such a huge, success. We were 112% funded or something like that. It was such a, I mean, that's the greatest boost you can get being an independent artist, is to, like, so many times indie artists or any artist can say, like, I don't even know if anybody's paying attention to what I'm doing out there, and you get humdrum and all this stuff. But I literally had names and dollar amounts of how much people cared about my music, and that was really helpful in writing the project and putting it out there. And that's why I'm a huge fan of crowdsourcing in general, because it really can. You can literally, right now, I can look at 92 people who say, yes, we want to hear more music from you. And I can't say nobody cares anymore.
Exactly. Now, so when you were doing that first one, were you in the middle of producing it while you were doing the campaign? Because like right now, you're in the studio while you're also running the campaign. I mean, what's that like?
Terrifying, and maybe a bad choice, but I decided to. Now I'm kind of regretting it, because I don't know what's going to happen with this campaign that we're in the middle of now. But I'm hoping that, that we still have a week to go. A lot of craziness happened. Like last time, I didn't know if it was going to make it, and then it did. Whatever. So I have a few tricks up my sleeve. Hopefully, they will kind of help this one go over the end. But it definitely I've never. I think that when I did Hello Stranger, the one that didn't go in 2010, I had started writing the songs, but I was so scared to book studio time, because if it didn't go, I didn't want to be in debt to anybody. And Andy Osenga, who's my producer, was like, we'll pencil it in and we'll slowly like tiptoe towards it and hope it works. And then it didn't. And like I said, thankfully, some opportunities arose to go ahead and do it anyway. And I'm so glad we did, because it was a gamble that worked out. And with the last one that did get funded, it got funded, and then I said, okay, time to write.
Yep.
So I didn't have a song written.
Oh, wow.
I had like 20 ideas, and then it was very, in a way, stressful, because I had people who I knew their names who were relying on me. So I had to, get to work and make it good.
The project sounds great. I mean, I picked it up. You
thanks.
put it on Noise Trade. Thank you very much for that.
And
and I've also been listening to some of your stuff on Bandcamp.
That's right.
But now, if you were to pick just a handful of songs to say, somebody that's never heard of me, if they want to know what I'm like, I mean, you've got a lot of music on Bandcamp. What do you think would best represent maybe what the future projects will be, or best represent like what you've done so far?
I would say that this. I mean, there on Noise Trade there is a sampler. I put up sort of a starter kit, if you've never heard of me, which has a couple songs from each of my albums that sort of do that really well. But this one that's coming up that I'm on the tail end of finishing right now.
Time Travel.
Exactly, Future Boy, which is essentially a time travel EP, and it might be a little bit misleading title, but still that's what we're dealing with here. But there's I would say it's a little bit more on. I have a song called Hard Band to Love that's a little bit more fun, tongue-in-cheek rockin' on my reintroduction album, and then I have a song called Invasion on my Hello Stranger album that I write all these different types of songs, and so it's fun to go back through and sort of be like, that would be a fun universe to sort of extract and see where I can create in that a little bit more. And so those definitely, it's way more upbeat. It's way more roll your windows down in the summer and blast it going to the beach or whatever kind of feel. Not really. The whole time we were making this EP or making it now, we're like, this feels like we should be making this in California. It has that sort of like, but then the content lyrically is a lot of sort of heavier things that I've been thinking about and trying to juxtapose those two. So with that one, and then the other EPs are just the third one that I want. The second one's a Christmas EP, and it's a little bit more of a collaboration with me and my friend Stacy Lance, who's an artist here in town, and we write a lot together and perform a lot together. And she's amazing and has sung on everything that I've ever recorded since I met her, anyway. And the third one is more stripped down, piano acoustic, and that would be like I have a song called Lost at Sea. I have a song.
That one's really melancholy. I
Yeah.
really loved that song. It's just
thanks.
I was listening to the reintroduction, and I got to that one. It was like, okay, I'm just going to stop what I was doing, because I was kind of, in the background, and that one really made me stop and just like, wow, I'm going to soak this in. It was.
Oh, that's so good to hear. Because that Andy and I, as we were putting these songs together, we talked a lot about music, and mainly about the power of songs. And I mentioned a couple different songs that are like that. Even when you first hear them, you sort of stop and you sit down and you really listen. And I'm like, I want to write a song that does that, and I want to put it right in the middle of the record. I want to put it to where if you put it on and you're cleaning the house or you're doing something in the background, you stay in the car an extra 5 minutes when you're at your destination to listen to it, And so that makes me really happy. But that song, or I have a song called Young Man's Game, and on this last one that I feel like sonically it would kind of sound more like that. So I write all sorts of different types, and I like doing that. I get bored very easily, and I want to jump to the next thing and challenge myself. So really, I want to fill the spectrum with these 3 releases, if people will pledge and allow me to do so.
So how did you get started with music? I mean, I know you talked on your podcast, Who Writes This Stuff, about having been homeschooled the last couple of years of high school, but I know you were really into music, like going to Cornerstone and Five Iron Frenzy, but like for you as a performer, songwriter, where did that start?
It sort of came up behind me. Basically, my entire career is entering through like hidden side doors in a house. Like I never really have walked through the front entrance, metaphorically. But there's a lot of I wanted to perform in my 9th grade talent show, and I wasn't an outgoing kid at all. I was very shy, and I was maybe outgoing with my family and friends, but I sort of, came into my own in high school, and I wanted to perform in the talent show at the end of 9th grade, and I wanted to be a comedian really bad. I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. I wanted to be Steve Martin. There are these guys that were like my heroes. So I basically found a guitar in my parents' attic that had 3 or 4 strings on it, and basically figured out a couple songs. There were 2 chords that I could perform, like funny songs, that I could perform. And I did it. And my dad eventually was like, okay, I'll restring this guitar if you really want to learn to play it. And they thought I was going to be, over the guitar phase at the end of the summer. And by the end of the summer, I had formed a band with other people who were awesome. in my youth group, and we played. And then my youth minister gave me the greatest gig of all time by saying, hey, if you want to play an original song, he asked if I would lead worship every Wednesday for the youth. So, and I said, I'll do it if I can play an original song at the end of that worship set. So I get to perform a song that I wrote. And so I would write a new song every week. And so I probably, in that first year, I probably wrote 40 to 50 songs that I didn't even play. Like sometimes I would write them, play them, and then toss them aside. It was just, it was an exercise. And then eventually it got to the point where I started this band, and we played a couple of the songs, and then the other guys wrote songs. And then it just got to a point where I graduated high school. I homeschooled, like you said, the last couple of years, and my parents kind of gave me the opportunity to take a year off. And they were like, if you want to go to school, they were both college professors, and they're like, if you want to go to college, you can right now, or if you want, you can kind of like, see where music's going to take you. And my dad's a musician, which is why he sort of had the foresight to think like maybe this is something. If anything, they thought he'll get it out of his system.
Sure.
And here I am 15 years later or whatever, and it's kind of amazing. So I just kept going from there. I just found more people who did it, more seriously than I did, and I just asked a million questions and just wrote songs and wrote songs and wrote songs and learned other people's songs, and then eventually made it to Nashville. and it's so weird to think now, to look back and be like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm 33 and I'm just gonna keep doing this because I love it. It's never even been to a point where I thought about doing something else because this is just
So is this your day job?
Yeah, it is. I have a
That's
bunch
awesome.
of random little jobs that I do on the side, but essentially they're all creative based though. So, because I'll play at weddings or I'll DJ weddings. So yeah, I quit my last quote unquote day job. I say I'm 5 years sober from day jobs, and I did 5 years ago. I quit my last day job to do this. And I kind of told myself any creative job that comes along, even if it's not what I songwriter stuff, I'll take it if it pays, just because that's better than not working my creative muscle. For me, anyway. I know a lot of people do really well in different office settings and stuff. I've never been that
Well,
guy.
it seems
So,
like in Nashville, if you're a musician, you got the obligatory Starbucks stint that you do. Like,
yeah,
it's the
there's a lot of that stuff.
waitresses or actresses, and the barista has a band.
Mhm.
Or
Yeah, it's that's the truth. And there's the trope of like the guy serving you your latte is a better bass player than you. That whole like you have no idea who you're talking to. That's true. And thankfully, moving here, there are so many differing types of jobs in the creative field that you can do. It's like finding out about Oz and you're like, oh, I want to go there because I heard that you can do this one thing. And then you walk into the gates of Oz and you find out there's a million jobs for you. So, and Nashville's really good at like helping out its own and being like, this guy needs a gig. So we'll put him on the road with this guy, or like everybody helps each other out.
So
which
now,
is really nice.
along those lines, you ran into Andy Osenga. I know him from the Normals because
Yeah, me too.
big fan going way back.
Me
But,
too.
So you start making some connections through that network. I mean, is that what kind of prompted the whole podcast? And hey, I want to talk to other musicians. And
It did. Literally, Andy Osenga is what prompted that podcast because I met him when I grew up in Arkansas, and I met him because I worked at a venue there that I basically just was booking my CD collection. I was going through being like, would I love to contact? And so I brought Andy in, and we just immediately clicked. He invited me to come visit Nashville. I came and hung out, and I went to lunch with Andy, and at that lunch was Andrew Peterson and Jeremy Casella and all these guys, and I just was in awe. And now these are guys that I call my friends, which is just bizarre. But like I started hanging out with Andy, and we would go on the road together, and we would have these great late night conversations that I was like, man, because I'm a huge fan still, but I was a huge fan of the Normals in high school, and I was like, if you told me when I was 17, if you took this conversation and showed it to me, I would have thought that I had made it in every sense of the word. And not only is that a good perspective giver, like, oh, maybe I am living my success now, and we're always looking to the future. What's next?
Sure.
What's next? Which is good to push yourself, but at the same time, like to look back and be like, man, if you told even 20-year-old me that this is where I'd be, I would just be high-fiving myself.
Yeah.
So like those conversations I had with Andy in the van or our car or whatever, I was like, everybody should hear this. Not only is it insightful to who he is as a great artist and just a great person, but it's so encouraging to hear his story and his struggles, and honestly, that he's just a guy who has a job that happens to be something that we can all enjoy and be entertained by and pushed and encouraged by. But he has such a great heart, and so many times in interviews we just get little snippets of people. I was like, and I love podcasts in general, so I was like, what if this is what, and I wanted to do a podcast for a long time, so I was like, what if this is what my podcast is just sort of fly on the wall conversations with people who might be well known, some people who are really great and up and coming. Just sort of, I'm obsessed with the working musician, the people who are slugging it out, even though they might not have a massive Twitter following or something. And so every week I try to put up a different artist, and artists come back and we catch up, and it's really informal, but it's fun. It's my favorite thing that I do, probably.
So how many interviews do you kind of bank ahead of time, or do you?
Nuts and bolts. Okay. Yeah, I absolutely do. If you want to get inside baseball about it, I'll talk to you about it. No, I usually have at least 3 in the bank every time one episode drops. Since I've been recording the past couple weeks, I haven't done one, but I'll do maybe 3 or 4 episodes recording a week. And then so when I go on the road and stuff, I can still
Yeah.
upload and so it just depends. I mean, there was a time when I was doing one every other week for about 3 years. I was doing that because I was always on the road, and it's just hard to nail people down. But since I've been home writing and stuff, it's been really easy to grab people and just schedule and that's so there's always, to answer your question, there's always like 3 or 4 that are in the bank, and I'm always sitting on them and like, oh, I can't wait till people hear this one, or
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my wife about, so the last one, of course, this was before yesterday. So
Right.
the last one, he's talking to J.J. Heller, and like he's at their house, and the kids are sleeping upstairs, and she's like, he was in Phoenix? No. They've moved back to Nashville.
Yeah.
Okay, because they had the whole back and forth thing.
And we cover that in the podcast. We talk about that,
But now, so do you have your wish list of, because I don't know who all you've interviewed, but like Fleming and John, I know they're in Nashville, or the guys in the choir, I know they're in Nashville, or are there any of those, like, if I could ever corner so and so and just talk to them for a while, who would still be on your wish list?
What's amazing is I knocked out a bunch of them at the beginning, which blew me away. I thought it would take forever for anybody to pay attention or take this seriously, but like I'm friends and always will be a fan of Jars of Clay, and they not only, I was like, let me just talk to one of you guys, and they were like, early on, I think I had 2 episodes up, 3 episodes, and they were like, why don't you just come over and have lunch with us at the studio? And so I sat down for an hour while they ate lunch, and like we talked, and I think Dan's going to come on again, but there's just a bunch of John Foreman I got to talk to, who I'm a huge fan of. I got to go backstage. Well, they performed at a amusement park. Wow. So you can literally hear a roller coaster in the background while we're talking. We keep laughing at it, but there's a bunch of guys like that, and it's one of those like weird superstitious things for me where I don't really want to say because I'm worried that they won't come on. But honestly a lot of the guys that I would love to talk to, and by guys I mean anybody creative, there's a lot of filmmakers that I would love to have on, because a lot of the press that gets done from movies, which I'm a huge fan, I'm a huge movie buff, are by the actors, and I'm more interested in the guy who wrote the script, or the guy who was there literally from the day they pressed play on the script, or and to the end when they edited it. That guy was there the whole time. I would love to talk to. There's a lot of filmmakers that I would love to talk to in that respect.
So you're with me on the whole Netflix ought to have the commentary as an audio track.
That would be amazing.
DVDs. Yeah.
That's coming. Any movie that I get, I won't buy the DVD or the Blu-ray unless there's a director's commentary on it, and because I'll wait, because they'll do that with like the next one. A lot of times they hold out, and I'm like, oh, there's gonna be one where because I love that kind of stuff. I want to know. This is why I'm interested in why this podcast exists, because I want to know what they were thinking when they made this decision and decided to do this, and So
one of the questions you ask folks pretty regularly is for a bad concert experience. So I'm going to ask you for a bad interview experience. Have you ever had, you don't have to name and shame, but have you ever had an interview experience where it just like went sideways unexpectedly?
No, I mean, you're talking about people that I've interviewed or people that have interviewed me?
Well, either way.
I've definitely had some interviews where I felt like where I was interviewing somebody on the podcast where I felt like this is going to be unlistenable. Like, this is not going anywhere. This is because you get in your head and you're so like, you're looking at this person, especially if you don't know them very well, where you're like, well, this isn't going great. And then 20 minutes in, something kicks in. There's been a couple of those where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm digging here. I cannot get anything that makes them want to open up, and so there's been a couple of those, but then they ended up being some of my favorite episodes because it took a little bit of work. It's fine to have your friends on and just have a jovial conversation, but if you really have to find out what makes somebody tick and be like, what are they interested in that I can maybe get them to open up about? For me as an artist, I had an interview that I did a couple years ago where I kept getting asked about being a feminist, and I've never been an outspoken it was such an interesting angle, but every question had to do with what's my most feminist album, song, all this stuff, and I was just like, I had never thought about this before.
So who was doing the interview? I mean, was it?
It was a feminist blog, and I didn't realize that. I just got an interview request for this blog that didn't have anything to do with feminism in the thing. But honestly, it ended up being great because I really got to think about the fact that, oh yeah, I like women. I think I'm a feminist. Like, this is great, but also just handle, I'm not a feminist. I just happen to like people, and I don't write from a male's point of view as much as I just write from people's point of view. But it was definitely like I had to be like, what's in the middle of it? And thankfully it was written. But I kept going through. I was just like, what is this? What is, But that was definitely the most precarious one. Usually they're more straightforward and talk about things that I never really been blindsided but like that before. By the way, this is the best one I've ever done, by the way. I don't know if,
oh, well, thanks.
Not to butter your bread, but these are
okay,
great
so
ones.
here's a question you didn't ask me, but I'm just going to answer. When I hear the name Keith, I think of the fact that every single person I've known named Keith is a really great guy. Like so there are some names where we have 2 daughters, and we've talked about names for boys and girls before we had kids, and there are names where our rules were their initials couldn't spell something that they would be mocked for.
That's smart.
And then whatever name we chose, every person that we had ever known with that name, it had to be somebody we liked. Like, you can't name your kid, Tyrell if there's that Tyrell and you always have bad feelings about that
that's
person. Because, that's your kid. So every Keith we've known, we've really liked. So we don't have a
I love the
boy
name
named
Keith.
But yeah.
I'm obsessed with the name Keith, as if you've listened to any episode of my podcast in the last year.
Well, you've talked about like old names. So our daughters are Ellen and Jane. So we're that same kind of school of the old classic names.
Yeah, I love that. And that's making a comeback. I feel like there's a lot of sort of names that were around in the Victorian era or whatever that are making a comeback, which I really like. But I'm obsessed with any like time-stamped name. Like, I love, Keith was really big when I was a kid, because I think it was like a 70s kind of name that kind of came through the 80s and stuff. But it's just fascinating how something like a sound that we call people names can be in fashion and out of fashion. It's just interesting to me.
Yep. Okay, so you've got 7 days left for the campaign.
Yeah.
$7,000 to go, roughly, a little less.
Yeah. $1,000 a day. Let's do it.
How often are you hitting the refresh button? Like, just you're in the studio,
a lot.
So.
Yeah, I just finished up. I have a little bit more to do starting next week to finish up this recording, and now I'm sort of, since it is a slow and steady campaign this time, instead of like last time, I think half of it was funded in the first 24 hours, which I think I was like, this is going to be the same. And it's not. Every campaign is different. It depends on what type of year you're doing it. There's so many factors that go into it that it's just hard to even grasp what people are thinking. And I have people who have emailed me and said, I am going to back this, but it'll be towards the end, which is nice, but also stress-inducing, because I'm like, yeah. So, but it's always a great lesson in learning to control what you can control and don't worry about what you can't. So, there was a few days for sure where and maybe a little bit, an hour or so every day that I'm just like, oh, this isn't going to happen. This is a nightmare. How embarrassing will this be? And it's not. Like Hannah Miller, I just had on my podcast. Yeah. She had 2 successful ones and then one that didn't go. And so she figured it out. It forces artists to be a little bit more, think outside of the box. So I'm not refreshing it right now. Once we get to like the 24-hour period, I will black out the curtains and just sit there and, or either that or I'll put on a telethon that live streams and I'll just have people. I'm thinking about doing that, honestly, and just having like a rotating group of friends come in and play music and be like, let's get it up to 10,000 or whatever it is. Yeah. So we'll see. I really believe in these songs, and it's hard when I was hoping sort of to get started on it so I could enter people into it and show people that I was like, listen to what we're doing. Listen. But it's so hard, and every day in the studio we've been like, I wish we could just show everybody one by one, bring everybody into the studio and sit down and be like, listen to this song and now this one. But you can't do that. You just have to hope that your previous albums have done the trick and people want to see you do more.
Well, now you've got your cover EPs on your website as a free download as well. You did a cover of the song from Greece as well, right?
Yeah, you're the one that I want.
Yeah, and that was really fun too. It was like so stripped down, and it reminds me a lot of the guy from the Frozen Ocean that's
Oh,
done.
I'm not familiar.
I think his name's Dave Swanson, but he does stuff as the Frozen Ocean. You'll find him on Bandcamp, and he had a Kickstarter. But he did a remake of Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire, and a remake
awesome.
of Creedence. Have you ever seen the Rain? They were just
Oh,
really
yeah.
slow and really laid back, and it was like just haunting. Kind of like,
Yeah.
do you know the Waterdeep stuff?
Yeah, of course.
So they did Coming in the Air Tonight or whatever.
Phil Collins song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I didn't really like listen to that or like that when it was new, when it was on, Miami Vice or whatever. I mean, it was just like, whatever. I heard Dawn do that song, and it was like slow, and I'm listening to the words, and I'm going, oh wow, this is like a really deep song. I mean,
Yeah.
like the depth of that song, it took the speed shift for me to actually hear what it was that I missed before, because it was just like this pop thing.
I used to do that all the time with my dad's records. We've all done it. You slow it down the speed, and it turns into this somber. We used to love taking like the most pop song we could think of, and so I think part of that has kind of come through, because I was thinking how annoying and shrill that Grease song is to me. I actually don't like that song, the original recording, and so it was sort of a challenge to take a song that irked me and turn it into something that was maybe interesting. And that was I feel like it worked out. Like Stacy and I who sang on it were just like, oh, this is like something completely different. And I love when you can do that, and that's just shows that cover songs are a great example of how you can take music and just shift it around a little bit, even just messing with the RPM or whatever, and then or the BPM, and it turns into this whole other moody thing.
Yep.
It's fascinating.
Cool. Well, I will definitely encourage folks to check out your music and to act fast on this campaign. I'm a backer,
please.
and I want to hear it. I want it to complete and hear all three. So,
yeah, I hope people do, and I'm going to keep on keeping on no matter what. But this is definitely something that I think I'm working my tail off to make sure that it's a project that people will want to listen to for a long time and be proud that they said that they were a part of.
Oh, you'd mentioned in an email also that you're looking to, or maybe it was a Facebook post, you're doing a tour coming up. If folks are interested in booking you for a house tour or something like that, what are you looking for? How can they help?
I go all over. So if you hear my music and you think that this would be fun to listen to in my living room live with a guy on an acoustic guitar to invite my friends to, they can go to my Facebook which is Nick Flora Music, and or nickflora.com, and kind of see. Like I said, I kind of take chunks of the U.S. and divide them up throughout the year and tour a lot. I play everywhere. So if they wanna hang out with me for an hour and a half with their friends, contact me. I would love to do it. I love performing live is my favorite part, and I think it shows. So that's the best way.
All right. Well, cool. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah. Thanks, Garrett.
Talk to you later, Nick.
Bye.
Bye.